Welcome to another episode of Emotional Nightmares. My name is Tyler.
I'm Nicole.
Hey, Nicole, how are you feeling today?
You know what? I'm all right. I want to definitely bring some stuff up that I'm dealing with personally.
Okay. What do we want to talk about?
Specifically right now, me and my whole family are dealing with anniversaries. So it's about to be the 1-year anniversary of my grandfather's passing. And it's also St. Patrick's Day. So, that had me thinking a lot about how, things, the way you go through life and the events that happen to you and the key marks you make on those memories are really important, right? And when we have people that we're helping, a lot of their relapses have come from things that were led by an event or an anniversary or the emotions of vulnerability due to those events. Mm-hmm. And so I know personally that you do a lot of PTSD stuff. So
yeah,
I figured you could share your wise words of wisdom here, and we can get into really why is remembering these key things actually important for our recoveries, and why do they become such a hassle for people who aren't aware of them?
I think we're talking about many different things within that one statement that you're bringing up.
A squirrel. I was born a squirrel. I'll die a squirrel.
Yeah, I think we're coming up with a lot of different things. For me, right? So when we're talking grief and loss, right? Because that's one of the things that you're talking about, like the anniversary of somebody's death or even the remembrance of it, going through it. I always think of grief and loss different, right? So my opinion of it, my viewpoint of it is we only miss the people we love for our own selfish reasons, right? So when I learn to let go of the selfishness is when I can celebrate the life and learn to let go. And it's kind of like the mourning process, right? So, because I think a lot of it, we put a lot of emphasis on this. Like, I've lost a lot of people in my life. And I can't tell you when their passing was. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I try not to, and this is just for me, right? Because I try not to remember that. I try to remember, like, the good things, right? And I don't focus so much on the like, who do I talk to? You know what I mean? Like, one of the people that was the most closest to me, and I talk about him often, is, I considered him like a brother, which was Terry, and he passed away. And, I talk to him every day, right? All throughout recovery, everything, every day. And, like, when he passed away, it was like one of the hardest things. And for me, it was learning to let go of the selfishness of, like, man, who am I going to talk to now? Who's going to send me the YouTube video of music videos, right? Because randomly I would just get all these, check this new artist out. So for me, it was learning to celebrate that. And I also have to keep in mind that one of the things that he would always say to me was, bro, I'm so proud of you for being sober, right? So why would I want to mess that up? Yeah. You know what I mean? Even though he's not here no more, he's still, like, and I have survivor's guilt over it. Like, why am I here? That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But, I look at things like, why would I want to mess that up? You know what I mean? And I think we focus a lot on that. Is like, people focus more, from my experience of talking to people, is, oh, so-and-so passed away and I didn't know how to deal with it. and I started using, right? Because, let's be real.
It's a big one.
Well, let's be real. We can tie it into with what you just said. Is,
right. That's why I came to you.
I don't know everything. I'm not, but I'm saying like the trigger aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a trigger, right? Because like I think triggers are bullshit. They're a good excuse for us to get high or for whatever it is. Triggers exist in the true nature of I see something, I hear something, I smell something.
Yeah.
It brings back that memory.
Yeah.
Right? They're in many different things, not just drugs and alcohol, but like trauma, right?
Yeah, yeah. Peer-reviewed, studied, proven. We love peer-reviewed.
Right.
That's our favorite thing.
So it's in trauma, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh wait, I've been here before. This is going to be a thing, and then we react off of that trigger, right? But I think a lot of times we use it as an excuse.
Oh, 100%.
Like we use it as that excuse because for us as recovering addicts and stuff, let's be real, like heroin, cocaine was the only coping skill.
100%.
Right? And if you think back, like, and we know like addiction is not because I use drugs and alcohol. Right? Drugs and alcohol are not the problem. The problem is us. Where does that come from? Right? And like, if you really break it down, when I was younger, right, and you can attest to this too, like I remember the first time I drank alcohol, right? I was happy and I drank and I was happier.
Okay.
I was mad and I got drunk and I wasn't mad anymore. I was sad once, I got drunk and I wasn't sad. Right. So I created a coping skill.
Yeah.
Right? That's the addiction.
I mean, yeah, that's essentially it. I mean, that's
how it begins.
Absolutely.
That's how it starts, right?
Right.
Is I created that addiction.
Right.
So part of the recovery process is learning the new coping skill.
Yeah.
So when an anniversary comes up, for example, and right now it's what, St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
Which
the international holiday of drinking as proclaimed by parties.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm a real alcoholic. Every day was a good day.
Yeah.
I didn't need a holiday.
You didn't need St. Patrick's Day.
But Christmas is usually the big one.
It's a huge one. Right?
Christmas is usually the big one where it's like, the anxiety of being around family. And just because like I'm in recovery doesn't mean everybody else has to alter their life.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I have to go to a family event, there might be drinking there.
Right.
How do we deal with these things? Like, that's what we're really talking about is like when these situations come up and we have that urge per se of, man, I don't know how this is. And like, I have the thought of maybe I just want to get drunk. Maybe I just want to, do a bag of dope. It's, what can I do different? Right.
Yeah.
Which, and we know, right. Yeah. Which is like, I'm going to talk about it. Right. I'm a huge fan of talk therapy. Right. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a therapist per se. Because obviously there's like, people in the program of AA or NA, right? There's your sponsor, your support group. But people that just generally have other issues going on, it's when those thoughts occur, it's how can I talk to somebody else to go over it? You know what I mean? And kind of go over it that way. For me, that's always been the way to handle it. Whenever a critical situation comes up, I got to talk to somebody about it because, like, if not, what do we do? We dwell on want to do.
Right? While we overthink it and project it and make ourselves believe things that aren't true from facts we pulled from the thin blue sky.
Then you react on it.
And then you do that.
Right?
And then you make everybody aware of how you're reacting.
And unfortunately, we're kind of like the people that will glorify it, right? Yeah. Where it's like, well, it wasn't that bad, right? You know, we're shooting mud puddle water, but like it's not that bad.
It could be worse. It could be toilet water.
Right.
And so we justify.
And I think a lot of the problem is too, is like once you start building up some sobriety, and you start regaining life, you start looking at things like, well, maybe just for today I could do it, right? And like, when has that ever worked, right? Like
Never.
if I knew, like, do we know moderation? Like, I don't know that.
No, moderation is not something that I have. Sober, not sober, healthy, not healthy. Moderation is a thing I was not born with.
My Amazon account will tell you that I don't know moderation, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like we have these issues, we have these things. So it's how do we let go of them?
Yeah.
Talking them out is the one way to let go of them, and finding those new coping skills.
Yeah.
Grief and loss is always the big one, though. Like, I'm with you on that. Like, that's always the big one for people. I myself, like I said, like I look at it like that, is that I'm only feeling this way because I'm being selfish right now.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I want this person around because I want to talk to them or I want to do something with them, you know? I think about my grandmother, right? Like she had MS. So she was in a lot of pain.
Yeah, it's
right?
a terrible disease.
But who's going to make me soup, right? Like who's going to make me cookies, right? Who's going to talk to me? Who's going to be my number one fan, right? Because my grandmother, I could have killed somebody right here, and she'd be like, he didn't do it.
I know.
Right?
I have a grandmother that's very serious, similar, who has since passed, but she was a big enabler. But she loved me. She loved me.
Right.
I think she did.
So our selfishness, though, is that of who's going to do this, where's this at? When in all reality, man, she was in a lot of pain. Yeah. Right? Like she was struggling and like she was a nurse. So I couldn't imagine the mental torment too.
Oh,
because like
well, now you can.
Well, now I can, but even to that extent I can't, right? Because like she was in her last days and couldn't communicate properly of like what was going on because MS had taken over, that she couldn't say, this is the issue and this is how it needs to be fixed. Right. Instead, she had to rely on other things and other people, and she didn't want other people talking for her. Right?
I mean, who does? I don't. Right. You don't, No. I think that's very...
So the selfishness in me, though, right? So it's when I let go of that selfishness and understood, like, whatever you believe in, heaven, hell, whatever that is, like, I believe, like, my grandmother's in a better place. Yeah. So I believe that it's much better than where she was. Yeah. So the selfishness of me, I had to let go of and say, like, I can celebrate her. And you know what? When I'm like, who's going to make me cookies? I make her recipe. And I'm like...
That's really sweet.
Yeah, and like, because I love cooking, right? And I love cooking because of her. So like, I'll make different foods. People will be like, oh, this is really good. And I'll be like, this was my grandmother's, right? So like, I'll make her food. It's
so sweet.
And then be like, this was hers. Like, this is how she made it.
And I think that's a practical way of like paying it forward, keeping the message, They, when we're getting sober and we're doing the whole 90-90 and we're trying to work those steps and we're doing those things, they tell us to, like be able to carry the message, right? Be able to help those and you're like, how do I do that? Like, and I think a lot of that is doing like you're doing, like, you really do wish that your grandma was still around. Who wouldn't? She sounds great, but the fact that she's not, what can you do to celebrate her life, right? What can you do to give those things meaning? That's really important. That's super important. That's a really cute story. Yeah.
I think we all have that, right? Yeah. Like my girlfriend, right? She was like, so she got this job. So she was like, can you teach me about fish? Right? I'm like, I absolutely can. because my grandfather has been having me fish since I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, what do you want to know? Do you want to go fly fishing? You want to go, what kind of fishing are we doing here? Right? So like, and like, as I'm explaining stuff to her, she's like, well, why is this a thing? And I'm like, because my grandfather said it is.
Yeah.
Right? And she's like, but why?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, because he would do this, that, and the third, right? And then
Yeah.
I'd be like, and so because he would do that, that's just why I do it. So like, I'm tying this the way I'm tying it because that's the way he showed me to do it. And
Right.
like, I'm explaining to her about that. So I think with everybody we have past in our life, if we're carrying them, right? Like, you're explaining this stuff to people.
Yeah.
So like, nobody really passes away. Right? Like, we all live on
Yeah.
through different memories and different things that we learned. It's only when I sit down and I selfishly sit there and I'm like, but who's going to do this? And like, then I start feeling that sadness, right? What does sadness lead to? That's going to lead to, I need to self-medicate.
Right.
I need to fix this. I need to get out of this. And for me, it's always been, if I can just carry on what they taught me,
Right.
I'm still keeping them alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the big one.
Yeah. That's really important. That's a really sweet story, actually. I appreciate it. I'm like, oh, that's so cute. I'm a sucker for grandma and pap-paps. Like, they're my favorite. Like, ain't nobody better mess with no Grammy. I'm coming for you. Like, I'm not messing with this pap-pap. This one's mine. Like, I feel that way. And my grandfather I'm speaking about, and actually, like, I have two, like, really huge anniversaries right now for me and like my emotional well-being. I mean, honestly, right? Because I had a shitty childhood, which was my perception, right?
My favorite topic.
I know, and it really was, because if I look back on it now, especially I was just hanging out with my grandma, who's so cool. I was just telling her that, like, when I smell something that reminds me of a cottage that she has, which is really it just smells like a barn. It's just a barn smell. But to me, it's like my grandmother's cottage, you know?
Yeah.
Then I remember all of those really wonderful times that we had up there, like going fishing. And my uncle and my dad and my grandfather, they would take me, and I am who I am, and I never received the type of care that I give my children as a child, so I'm bouncing off the walls and fidgeting and asking questions and touching stuff and not listening. And, they would take me no matter what. And that was like the coolest thing. And I remember we'd walk to the pontoon boat in the rain. And I'd say, why are we going fishing? It's raining. Don't we need an umbrella? Like, I was very concerned as a young child. And my uncle, my grandfather, and my dad, they were all telling me, do you know what happens when it's raining and it's time to go fishing? And I was like, no, I'm asking. Like, I want to know all the questions. And they were like, well, the only thing that happens is that you get wet. No, come on with us. Like, it was, and it was, they would really give me that, Yeah. And my other grandfather, his birthday is tomorrow, and he passed, and he raised me, before my step family came into my life, like, he was my anchor. And I do a lot of things just specifically because he does them. And sometimes I don't really realize that, but, I'm having these conversations with my grandmother, and she's telling me about memories and times that we've had. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I do that. That's exactly why I do that. But
and you have children, right?
Yeah.
So like, the cool thing is, though, like, in that particular situation, like, the cool thing is like, you get to show your child something and then be like, this is only, like, I know this because, my grandfather taught me this. Or, like, I learned this and this is why. So, like... This
is actually my favorite. So, I interrupted you. I'm terrible at this. At my unit, at the unit that I no longer work at, that I continue to say is mine, I would have pap-pap slogans of the day, where after group therapy, I'd put a pap-pap slogan up.
Yeah.
Okay? And my most favorite pap-pap slogan is, sorry is not a statement, it's an action.
Absolutely.
And so, like, I'd write that on, pap-pap's statement of the day today is, remember that sorry is an action. Stop saying it if you're not doing it. You know?
Yeah. That's my favorite saying. Like the best apologies changed behavior.
Yeah.
And for addiction, for addicts, that's the most important one. I think too is like, because like when we get sober, I see this all the time where people will get sober. The first thing we want to do is, man, I'm sorry. And I'll be like, stop. I'll be like, how many times did you say you were sorry for something?
Right.
And turn around and do it again. I believe that you believe that you're sorry right now.
I think it's just a coping skill. I think it's just a reaction that people say.
It is.
I'm sorry.
Like, it's just that natural reaction of like, I got caught.
Yeah.
And like, if I say sorry, you'll be okay. And it's like, no. Like at some point, you've said it enough for this same thing.
Yeah.
So like, if you never change the behavior, you're not sorry.
Right.
You're just sorry that the situation didn't work out, right?
You're
like,
just trying to say something in the moment.
Yeah, like and again, it goes into perceptions, right? Because perceptions is the core of everything.
I mean, that's really it.
Right?
I mean, honestly, and that's what I really hope that we're able to demonstrate to people is that, like, it doesn't matter how factual you feel the information is, your brain, because we're humans and we're having a human experience, is going to change the perception of that information. And sometimes even the most educated people will believe some things deeply. And it's really based out of absolutely nothing. And, checks and balances. People that I like to have in my life right now have a check and balance system and don't just go rogue with their thoughts. But
I mean, we all do, right? Like there's times because so back to your triggers, right? Like, because trauma, right?
Because
trauma is a perception.
Yeah.
Right. So like like trauma happens, right? Unfortunately, like we have traumatic events, and then something later in life will happen.
Yeah.
And it's like my perception of it is it's a repeat of that trauma.
Yeah.
Right. So we react trying to protect ourselves from that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, and I always tell people, and people hate it, but I'll always tell them, I'll be like, I don't care about your feelings, right? Because your feelings aren't real, right? Like the way I feel isn't always real.
I mean, valid, but not real.
Right.
Two different topics.
Your feelings are always valid, but it doesn't mean they're real. It just means that my perception of the situation allows me to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So I have to look at, and this is where like, this is so important to have those people because I have to sometimes say, let me reach out to somebody, explain the situation honestly, explain the situation, not just give them the parts that's going to make me look good.
Yeah.
Right. I got to give the whole situation and then say, what is your perception? Right. If their perception matches up, then I know like I have some valid here. Yeah. Right. But sometimes like I'll say something to people and they'll be like, dude, I think you're overthinking it. And I'll be like, probably, because like that's what I'm good at, right?
Yeah.
Like I overthink everything.
Yeah.
We all do, right? We all do. And that's the thing with perception is like at the core root of everything. Look at social media, right? Like
I hate it.
I hate it.
I'm all up in it, but I hate it.
I've made posts before and I've had people message me. Why'd you make that post? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right? And I'll be like, it ain't got nothing to do with you.
I think sometimes in my head, why did you make that post? I mean, sometimes I watch people on social media and I'm like,
yeah, but
that's a lot to put out there.
I've done that before, but sometimes though, like I'll be like, I may have posted something. I've posted like a meme before, right? And I've had somebody message me like, "Oh, bro, like, are you okay?" And I'm like,
"Oh, yeah." Okay.
I'm like, listen, like, I just agree with the damn meme.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just a share button.
Yeah, like I just agree with it.
I was like,
right?
Share.
I agree with that opinion, right? Like, but our perception, right, is maybe they're talking about me,
Maybe
or maybe
you're one of those,
maybe
or-
they're not doing okay. Maybe
Yeah.
they're this, maybe they're that.
Right.
You know, man, and like we see it all the time, and like, you know what's crazy is like we got a cell phone. I got a cell, right? So people will call me, right? Their perception is like I won't answer, right? Well, I called you. I was busy. Like I'm not glued to my phone.
Yeah.
Right? I was born in 85, right? So like I grew up with a phone that was like plugged to the wall.
Yeah.
Right? I don't always have my phone on me, and sometimes if I do, I'll see somebody calling and be like, now's not the time.
Right.
Right? Like I'm doing something.
I think social media has really influenced that. I think,
Man, people's perception of like you should be available at all times.
I'm not
crazy
available.
to me.
I'm barely available for myself at any time, over somebody else at all times.
Crazy.
Well, and so that's kind of like to bring it back around. That's kind of what I'm struggling currently in my life with, a balance, because I want to really focus on my career and my education and doing things that I really have interest in doing. But at the same time, I spend so much of my life being a bad friend because I didn't understand how to be a friend, how to be a daughter, how to be a sister, how to be a human. I really thought that it was me against the world and against reality, and that was really hard. So, now I'm struggling with this balance, being sober for over a decade, where I have a friend who's going through a super negative situation. I don't care what's true about it. I don't care what's not true about it. I just care that I have a friend who is going through a similar situation than I did, okay? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, it's about a topic that I have trauma about, And so when I was going through that, I felt like I didn't have anybody. So I love the fact that she's messaging me and keeping me involved, but at the same time, with every picture she sends me, with every message she sends me, with every video she sends me, I am incredibly overwhelmed. And then that makes her feel bad because she's like, I'm too much for you. And I remember being that feeling like you're too much, Yeah. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with you. I'm happy to be here for you. I understand that that's not your perception of me right now. I understand that, but it is incredibly difficult to, even sometimes, like even when we were talking to Rebecca, that was a little bit difficult for me to the nice thing about it was she has the same humor that I kind of do. So we were able to laugh about those things and move on with her story. But when people are in it, when they're in it, it's like...
It's hard.
Yeah, I can't get out.
I think that's the hard thing. That's the hard thing about working in this field that we don't talk about, right? It doesn't get talked about enough, the professional people, right? The so-called professional people, because trust me, I'm not really that professional of a person. I'm not PC. I'm not politically correct.
I cuss a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Right?
I try not to, but it comes out.
I'm trying really hard, right? So, one of the things though is, like, every day I go to work, right? I relive my trauma every day.
Yeah.
So, like, getting into this line of work, it's extremely important that we find self-care, right?
Right. And understand what we're getting into. Right.
Because we have like one person, I've had caseloads before where I'm like, literally every single client is my own personal trauma that like I've had.
Yeah.
So I'm reliving, but the difference is we're explaining how we got out.
Right.
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 And I think that's the important part to keep in the back of our mind.
Right.
Is like, I've been here before, but I kind of know the way out. So like, come with me.
Right. And and like as professionals and as friends who are in different places, right? I always get so frustrated because I'm like, I am not telling you what to do. If you think I'm giving you instruction, you're not hearing the same words.
Right.
I'm trying to help your perception. I'm just trying to help your perception.
Sometimes you can't.
You honestly can't. I mean, and it goes both ways too. You know, like general people who find addiction appalling or don't understand how people get here, you know, their perception is we just wake up one day and we're like, meth. I haven't met one. I have not met one that was like, you know what, my life is going so great. I just really think meth today. Like, I've not met somebody who became an addict because they wanted to, because they made a solid choice to want to. I've not met one.
And that's even the relapse, right? Is like, you're never going to wake up and say, today's a good day, I'm just going to smoke crack.
I think crack's it.
Right? Like, the relapse always happens at least 6 months before you pick up the drugs or the alcohol, or whatever it is, right? Whether it's you go back into your food addiction, you know, bulimia, you know, anorexia, self-mutilation, like whatever it is, right? Before you have a relapse into that aspect of it, it started way before the physical act, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it starts with the mental and emotional, and like we start disassociating, we start going through like the overwhelming feelings, all this stuff, until that just seems like the best solution, even though we know it's not, right? And that's why, like, I get irritated with people that are always like, well, they knew where it was going to lead them.
No, they didn't.
And I'm like, yeah, they probably understood that, like, I might end up back in the same situation.
Maybe.
But when you're going through it and, like, you feel alone and you feel like you're going through all these things. And, of course, like, obviously, like, you start isolating, right? And the self-isolation. And,
self-isolation. That's huge.
You start doing all that stuff. So, of course, you feel alone too, because you're like, I am alone, but you're alone because you're making yourself alone, right?
And then you have somebody who goes, but you're doing this to yourself.
Right.
And it's just like,
now I'm mad, right? Now I'm mad. Look,
Mom made me relapse.
Yeah. So that's exactly that justification, right? Of that. And that's why it's so important, with everything. And like I tell people all the time, on my own, I can walk around and be great in life when things are going my way.
Absolutely.
It's when life shows up. How do we combat that? What things do you have in place for when that happens, right? So whether it be, you know, for me, it's, you know, I have my support group. I have all these things. I have all these people that are there that I can call upon. I can just show up at. I can talk to, because when life shows up, I need those things. However, if we push those things away and life shows up, then it's like,
you have nothing to deal with life with.
Yeah, my best thinking has got me in the worst situations
Absolutely.
ever. Right? And I think that's where, you know, because I hear all the time, people will tell me, especially, you know, when they come to rehab, they'll be like, well, I know what I need to do.
I hate that.
I hate it.
Put a mental health professional in front of me who is struggling. Those are my favorite clients because they're the sickest ones. They're listen, excuse me. I have you know, I have a bachelor's degree from such and such a college for professional mental health, and I have a master's degree in social work, and I worked at a state facility for... You still need a therapist. You still need a therapist. You can't go through life white-knuckling it because you have a degree from some place that you paid for.
I always hate that. I always hate on the drug and alcohol side when people come in and they're like, well, I was clean for this period of time.
Yeah.
So I know what I need to do. And I'm like, no. You might know what you need to do, but you don't know how to do it. Right. Like, I know, and I always tell people, like, I know right now, like, I know what's wrong with my car. Yeah. Right? like right now, the current car that I have, the current vehicle, the sunroof is messed up, right? I know that's wrong, right? I know what's wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to do it, like how to fix it properly.
You sure could watch a lot of social media things that could tell you, but would you still know how to do it? No, because it's not the end all be all for information. So, right? This is a good analogy.
I need people, right? Like I need, I have a friend of mine, my friend Kurt. He's usually the guy. He's a mechanic. Mm-hmm. So I say to Kurt, how do I fix this? And he says, let me show you, right? So rather than him just fixing it for me, he shows me how to do it and overcome it. So next time, if this happens, I now know how to fix it, right? And that's how recovery works.
That's how it works.
That's it, right? Is like, I might know what's wrong. I know what I need to do, right? Like I need to fix the damn window.
Right.
I just don't know how, right? And I think that's where we have to let go of ego and pride, right? And man, we see that so often where people are like, well, I know what I need to do because I've done it before. And I'm like, well, if you did it, you wouldn't be in front of me.
Right now and you can go.
Yeah, I'm like, you wouldn't be in front of me.
Usually these people that you're saying this to, and I'm like, sure, go ahead and leave. If this is unneeded, unwanted for any reason, go ahead and go. Well, I have to be here because the judge says so.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Excuse me. If a judge said you had to be here, something went awry.
Well, and
so you do not know all.
My other thing to that though is, when did that work? Right? Like I talk to people all the time. They'll come in and be like, "Well, my PO says I need to be here." I'm like, "Well, your PO also said you needed to stay sober, and you haven't been able to do it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be here,
right?
Right? Like you just don't want that consequence." However, if we're not learning the new way of life, if we're not learning like how do I do these things differently, all you're doing is prolonging the inevitability.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm going to stay sober long enough to make somebody else happy, and then I'm going to pick up. Right. Now, don't get me wrong. I got a good friend of mine, my friend Josh. We got sober together we got sober in 2006, right? Maybe we'll have Josh on the show, but
sure.
Josh and I, right? So Josh is a court mandated person, right? He had to do it because he was like, I don't want to go to jail. So like I have to do rehab. I'm like, okay. And, him and I hung out, and Josh has been sober ever since because his mindset changed though.
Yeah.
Because he was like, yo, you're right. Like, I don't have to do this, and I could go sit in jail for a while. However, maybe I don't want to go to jail ever again.
It's wild.
And you know what? He's been sober ever since because, like, he started making the changes necessary.
Yeah.
So, at some point, like, we have to look at that, like, the mindset, right? Of we know, and a lot of our listeners know, the people listening, and common sense, right? I know if I'm just trying to stay sober for probation, parole, children, family, I've already set myself up for failure because these things are going to fail me, right? Because I'm putting expectations on it, right? And if I put expectations on these things and I say, I'm sober for this, sorry, what happens when that's no longer working, right? Because like I've had people, well, I got to stay sober, or my wife's not going to be with me. Right. But what happens if that relationship still goes awry?
Right.
Are you going back out to using? Of course you are.
But his wife did at that time.
Right, because then that goes into the excuse, right? Well, I was triggered because my wife left. And no, man.
I think, what do they call this when we're getting sober in the pro? Is this what they call reservations in the program? This is it for that?
Yeah. Part of them. I mean, there's more to reservations than that, right?
Yeah.
Because the reservation, even the question.
I'm going to do this for my wife, so that way when she doesn't do what I need from her, I can say it was her fault.
Yeah, reservations are always funny, right? Because it's always, what is there in your mind? And I hate how the question's worded, right? Because like then the ultimate question is always, is there anything that's going to happen in life that is so painful in life you're going to go through where you might relapse over?
Yes, I'll wake up tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know. Like
that's
probably,
a bad question.
right?
Yeah.
I always think that's a terrible question. Because the reservation, I mean, that's it, right? The reservation is what is there in life that can happen that's so painful that you feel that's the only option.
Human experience.
However, I always think like, man, like life itself is that awful, right?
Yeah.
So the question has to be, do you really want a new way of life? And like, do you really want to try?
That's really ultimately
it. It's not even about being sober, right? Because again, like I have to define recovery, right? Because words matter.
Right.
Right. So you have to define, what does that even mean to you? What does recovery even mean to you? For some people, my definition of recovery, like I just want to be okay mentally, right?
Right.
I want mentally to be okay. So I know drugs and alcohol are not mentally going to make me okay.
Right.
Right. For some people, though, that's not the case.
That's not the case.
They're like, listen, I just want, to have a job, the house. Like, I just want these things. And like, okay, then that's your road. That's how you're defining recovery.
Right.
I always hate, like, I'll never tell somebody, like, your definition of recovery has to be mine.
No, correct.
Right?
Yeah.
I believe
in harm reduction. I believe in meeting people where they're at. I'm there with them. Because I again, and like we've determined,
harm reduction's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
I've determined in my perception that not everybody can make it. And so sometimes they need those things. And so I have come to that realization myself. Do I fully believe in it the way it's being used? No, of course not. But like, I think that people will do and put so much time, energy, money, everything into remaining at homeostasis. Yeah. So avoiding emotional vulnerability, avoiding things that make them discomfort, avoiding accountability of anything, and like that will trap you. They'll spend more time and energy there if they, just like your friend, did the same amount of work in a different direction. How much easier things could be. But it's like, they either weren't shown, they don't cognitively have the ability, they've gone too far, and there's no coming back. So I believe in it.
I did.
I believe in humans.
I believe in it.
I want to.
I just don't like it.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like that's the thing is like so.
When I got sober, people were like, "Oh, you're doing that? Do you need that? Okay, because you're not really sober, or you're
and that's wrong.
Weak." Or and so
that's the part that irritates me about it.
I also don't like that, right?
Right, is like, I hate the whole like, all right, so let's just throw it out there, right? So I hate the whole concept of you're on Suboxone, so you're not clean, right? Because I hate the wordplay, right?
Yeah.
I hate like, everybody's out here dying.
Well,
right?
And that is a medication used for addiction, and we've demonized the word now.
So, well, not only that, like, people are out here dying, and we're playing with these words of, well, they're not clean, they're not sober. I'm like, shut up.
They're cheating.
Right? At the end of the day, I had a guy, and I used to be that guy, right? Mm-hmm. I'd be like, oh, you're on Suboxone.
Right.
Da, 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 da.
You were only sober in jail, doesn't count.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a guy that I was working with change my way of thinking on it, right? Because I was like, you know what? This man, he got full custody of his kids, right? Mm-hmm. Got a house. He has a job, right?
A lot more than maybe I currently have.
He has a vehicle.
Yeah.
Right? He has a bank account. He's not in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? There's POs don't even bother him, right? He changed his life.
Yeah.
How is that not recovery?
That's recovery.
Right?
For people who change because you have to change. But
so
if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Well, I think the problem is it's few and far between.
Yeah.
Right? And you get people that are like this. You get people that are like, well, I tried it that way and I didn't work for me, so therefore, okay, stop.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up.
Because it didn't work for you.
It's my perception of my own trust in myself.
Right.
It didn't work for me because I was buying it, selling it, doing more than I should have been, and there was I don't know if there still is very limited control on it, where people at the methadone clinic, I mean, that was a drug that had hurt them. Mm-hmm. It was in a lockbox. It was super secured, and the other ones weren't that way.
Right.
So you're either living dirty or you're living clean. What you do if you're living dirty or living clean will match those things. And if there is a difference, then that's an issue with your integrity, not how people are perceiving.
I always hate kids. Like I watch them get turned away, right? So like I watched this kid because he was telling me, and I'm talking to him and stuff, and I'm like, and somebody told him, I'm not going to work the steps with you because you're on this. So therefore I can't do that. And he told me, he was like,
he was jealousy?
I don't know. But he said to me, he said, bro, I don't feel like I belong in this program of recovery.
Just really sad.
Because of that. Right. And I'm like, well, I apologize. Right. Because that's not the message. Right. The message is, first of all, if we break down traditions of that 12-step program, it's the only requirement here is the desire to stop.
Just the desire. So not the action for it.
It's the desire,
it's
right?
Just desire.
So I'm talking to him and I'm like, he's making the changes to change his life. He has the desire. Right? He's stuck in that I don't know how, but here's something that's helping me get through, right? Call it a crutch, call it whatever you want. I don't agree with it, but
you don't have to live his life.
I'm not living his life. And at the end of the day, I don't have to agree with it to say, look, I respect you enough to know that I don't want you to live in hell anymore.
Right.
And if this is what it's going to take, I'm like, grab a piece of paper and some pencil. I was like, here's a 12-step working guide book. Let's sit down and start working these damn steps.
Yeah.
There's no reason that you can't. Right? That's ridiculous that anybody would say, I'm not going to do this because you're doing this. Because, and I'm not speaking on behalf of either one of these programs, right? Because that's just crazy. And that's not what that's about, right? Because tradition-wise, I'm not even identifying the program or trying not to. It slips. But sometimes you will get people, and that irritates me with everything really too, is because so there's mental health disorders out there.
I mean, they're real.
Yeah, and there's medication out there. Do I agree with it? Not necessarily, right? Is there some medications that work and some that don't? Sure. Right? I also know that I'm not a doctor.
Nor a chemist. I mean, it's close.
There was a time.
That's why.
There was a time.
Those exact things are why we believe that we can be doctors, lawyers, chemists.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but
please don't listen to me. No. Absolutely don't listen to me.
And I have to tell people.
I'm going to tell you so many things, but don't listen to me.
I don't agree with it on this. But why would that doesn't mean that it's not working. Right? Because again, just because your definition doesn't match up with my definition doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, right? Which I think on the next episode that we do together without a guest, we'll do one on. We're going to talk about language. We're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Definitions of stuff. Because,
yeah.
Because that, again, that's perception.
Verbiage.
Right? I'll hear people talk about well, they're not loyal. And I'm like, wait, stop. Your definition of loyalty is different than this person.
Absolutely.
Right? Your definition of respect is different than this person.
Right.
What you think is wrong doesn't mean that it should be. Because again, feelings aren't real.
Right. I mean, and that's why I even wanted to just like bring up this whole topic though, because I have a perception of what my triggers are and the word trigger and how popular that word has gotten in general society and what it actually means. Like, I can understand somebody saying, I understand what they mean by when they say, I'm triggered, you have triggered me, and they get weird. I'm perceiving that as something you just did made me vulnerable and I'm 100% uncomfortable. So look what I'll do to stay not vulnerable. Right? And so I'm like, okay, humans.
Even with
they
being
do the
offended.
humaning.
Right?
Same
like,
thing.
People will tell me all the
That's
time.
That's what I
like,
thought was the same.
I'll have people, I'm offended by.
Yeah.
Cool. Not my intent.
How?
Right?
I don't understand offense. Are you coming at me? Are you calling me names? And still, like, if I'm keeping what was taught to me true, the things that people say about me don't matter.
Perfect for the next episode. Right? So, man, is like that. Feelings aren't real.
No.
That's it. Right? So ultimately, I hope that we went all over the place.
We did not stick to the cue card.
But I hope that...
I did make one.
Yeah. I hope that you guys, maybe got something. Maybe you didn't. I don't know.
Maybe we'll scrap this episode.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's fine.
We'll still release it.
You
either get something or you don't. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you follow. I hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with your friends, your family. Not for nothing.
Right. We at least worked pretty hard on it.
Yeah, not for nothing. At least just maybe support us. But no, man, we appreciate you guys for taking the time out and listening to us. You could have been anywhere in the world today, but you chose to be here with us.
Yeah.
So for that, I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate you for listening. Thank you. You got anything?
Keep happy hour happy. I like that saying. It's not even mine, though. Like, can I say that? I don't know. When I do...
Is it copywritten?
I don't think so. When I do crisis management training, they have like a whole line about how you shouldn't drink after a traumatic event because you need 72 hours to process the traumatic event. So if you have a traumatic event, you go to happy hour, it's not going to be happy. So you should keep the happy hour happy.
Ooh, that's a whole topic. Hold that thought. Write that on your cue card. All right, man. Like I said, I appreciate you guys. That's all.
Thank you for watching.